Through the Desert by Henryk Sienkiewicz. Leave a comment to share your opinion. Chapter 17. The visit to the Mahdi and his talk with him had evidently not brought health to Idris, for during that very night he fell seriously ill and in the morning became unconscious. Shamas, Geber, and the Bedouins were sent for to appear before the Caliph, who detained them several hours and praised them for their courage. But they returned in a very bad temper and were exceedingly angry, for they had expected heaven knows what kind of reward, and now Abdullah had awarded them only an Egyptian pound and a horse. The Bedouins began to quarrel with Geber, and they nearly came to blows, but finally decided that they would ride along to Fashoda with the camel post, so as to demand payment from Smain. Camus, in the hope that Smain's protection would be more advantageous to him than staying in Omdurman, accompanied them. And then there began a week of hunger and privation for the children, for Geber never even thought of supplying them with food. Happily, Staś still had 2 Maria Theresa thalers that he had received from the Greek, and so he went to the town to buy dates and rice. The Sudanese had nothing to say against this, for they knew that he could not escape from Omdurman, and that he would on no account leave the little butte. But the walk was not without incident, for the sight of the boy in European clothing buying provisions in the marketplace attracted a crowd of half-savage dervishes who greeted him with laughter and howls. Luckily, many of them had seen him the day before when he was with the Mahdi, and so they restrained the others who wanted to attack him. The children, however, threw stones and sand at him, but he paid no attention to them. Prices in the market were exceedingly high, so he could not get dates, and Geber took most of the rice away to give to his sick brother. The boy resisted this with all his strength, which resulted in a scuffle, from which naturally the weaker one emerged bumped and bruised. Camus's cruelty now first became evident. He only showed an attachment to Saba, and fed him with raw meat, but he viewed with the greatest indifference the needs of the children whom he had known for some time, and who had always been kind to him, and when Staś turned to him, begging him to give Nell something to eat, he answered laughingly, "Go and beg." Finally, things came to such a pass the next day that Staś really had to beg to save Nell from suffering from hunger. His efforts were not altogether futile. Many times a former soldier, an officer of the Khedive of Egypt, gave him a few piastres or a handful of dried figs, and told him he would help him the following day. Once he met a missionary and a sister of charity, who wept on hearing the tale of the children's fate, and although they themselves were exhausted from hunger, they shared what they had with him. They also promised to visit them in the barracks, and the following day actually came, in the hope that they might succeed in being permitted to take the children along with them until the departure of the post. But Geber and Chamis drove them away with scourges. On the following day, Staś met them again, and they gave him a little rice and 2 small quinine powders, of which the missionary told him to be especially careful in case they should get the fever in Fashoda. "You are now going," he said, "to ride along the banks of the White Nile, which has overflowed, or straight through the so-called Sudanese. As the river cannot flow freely on account of the obstacles in its path, the plants and leaves which the current carries along pile up in the shallow places, where they form large infectious puddles. There the fever does not spare even the Negroes. Take special care not to sleep on the bare ground at night without a fire." "Would we had died," Staś answered, half sighing. Now the missionary, raising his wan face toward heaven, prayed a while, and making the sign of the cross on the boy, said, "Put your faith in God. You have not denied him, and his mercy and protection will be over you." Staś not only attempted to beg, but also tried to get work. One day when he saw crowds working in the place of prayer, he went over to them and began to carry clay to the wall which was being built around the place. It is true that he was laughed at and pushed about, but in the evening the old sheik, the overseer, gave him 12 dates. Staś was very much pleased with this reward, for after rice dates were the only food that was good for Nell, and it was becoming more and more difficult to find them in Omdurman. So he proudly presented the 12 dates to his little sister, to whom he brought everything he could find. During the last few days he had lived mostly on maize that he had stolen from the camels. Nell was delighted when she saw her favorite fruit, but she wanted Staś to share them with her. Standing on tiptoe, she put her arms around his neck and, raising her little head, looked in his eyes and begged, "Staś, eat half of them! Eat them!" But he answered, "I have already eaten. I have already eaten. Oh, I have had a great plenty." He smiled, but soon after bit his lips to prevent bursting into tears, for he was really all but starved. He resolved to go out the next day in search of work, but things happened that changed his plans. Early in the morning, a messenger came by order of Abdullah to announce that the camel post would depart for Fashoda during the night, and he brought an order from the Caliph stating that Idris, Geber, Shamus, and the 2 Bedouins should have themselves and the children in readiness for the journey. This order astonished and annoyed Geber, and he declared that he would not ride because his brother was ill, and there was no one to take care of him, and that even if he were well, they had decided to remain in Omdurman. But the messenger answered, "The Mahdi never changes his mind, and Abdullah, his caliph and my master, never changes his orders. A slave can take care of your brother, but you will ride with the others to Fashoda. Then I will go to the caliph and tell him that I will not ride. Only those gain admittance to the caliph whom he wishes to see, and if you try to force your way in without permission, you will be led out to the gallows." "Allah Akbar, then tell me plainly that I am a slave." "Be quiet and obey orders," answered the messenger. The Sudanese had seen the gallows in Omdurman almost broken down from the weight of those hanged on them, and that after the cruel Abdullah had pronounced sentence, new bodies were strung up daily, so he was afraid. What the messenger had told him about the Mahdi never changing his mind, and Abdullah never changing his orders, was confirmed by all the dervishes. Therefore there was no way of escape, and they would have to ride. "I shall never see Idris again," thought Geber. In his tiger-like heart there was still a feeling of affection for his elder brother, and the thought of leaving him behind filled him with despair. It was in vain that Shamus and the Bedouins explained to him that perhaps they would be better off in Fashoda than in Omdurman, and that Smain would probably not give them any larger reward than the Caliph had done. But nothing they could say was able to dispel Geber's sadness or appease his anger, which of course he vented chiefly on Staś. For the boy this was a day of real martyrdom. He was not allowed to go to the marketplace, and so he could neither earn nor beg anything, and he was made to work like a slave at the baggage, which was being made ready for the journey, and this was all the more difficult because he was very weak from hunger and fatigue. He was just about ready to die on the way, either from Geber's scourge or from exhaustion. Fortunately, toward evening the Greek appeared. As we have already said, he had a good heart, and notwithstanding all that had taken place, he came to see the children, to take leave of them, and to give them the most necessary things for the journey. He brought them several little quinine powders and some glass beads and provisions. On hearing that Idris was ill, he turned towards Geber, Shamus, and the Bedouins and said, "I have come by order of the Mahdi." When they bowed low on hearing these words, he continued, "You are to supply the children with food on the way and are to treat them well. They are to tell Smain how you have treated them, and Smain will report it to the Prophet. If there be any complaint about you, the following post will bring you your death warrant." A second bow was the only answer to these words, whereupon Geber and Shamus made faces like dogs that are being muzzled. The Greek told them to go away. Then he added in English as he turned toward the children, "I invented all this, for the Mahdi gave no further orders concerning you, but as he said that you were to ride to Fashoda, you must naturally reach there alive. Besides, I calculate that none of these people will see the Mahdi or the Caliph before they start on this journey." Then he turned to Staś and continued, "Boy, I had a grudge against you, and I still have it. Do you know that you nearly caused my ruin? The Mahdi was angry with me, and to appease him, I had to give up a considerable part of my fortune to Abdullah, and I am not quite sure yet whether I am safe for only a while or for always. At any rate, hereafter I shall not be able to assist the prisoners as I have done. But I am sorry for you, and especially for this girl here. I have a daughter about her age, whom I love more than my own life. All that I have done I did on her account. Christ will bear me witness to that. She still wears a silver cross under her dress, next her heart. Her name is the same as yours, my little one. If it were not for her, I should prefer to die rather than to live in this hell." He was overcome by emotion and remained silent for a while. Then he passed his hand over his forehead and began to talk of something else. "The Mahdi is sending you to Fashoda, secretly hoping that you will die there. This is his means of taking revenge on you, especially on account of your resistance, boy, which wounded him deeply, without endangering his name, the merciful one. He is always like that, but who can tell which will die first?" Abdullah suggested the idea of ordering these dogs, who carried you off, to ride along with you. He rewarded them very meagerly, and is afraid this may become known. Besides, he and the Prophet do not want these people to spread the news that there are still soldiers, cannon, money, and the English in Egypt, but it will be a hard journey and a long one. You will pass through a desolate and unhealthy land, and these powders will protect you. "Sir, tell Geber once more not to dare let Nell starve nor to beat her," begged Stash. "Fear nothing. I have spoken about you to the old sheik who drives the post. He is an old acquaintance of mine, and I have given him a watch, and this ensured his protection for you." With these words he prepared to leave them. Taking Nell in his arms, he pressed her to his heart and whispered, "God bless you, my child." Meanwhile the sun had gone down, and it was starlight. Through the darkness could be heard the neighing of the horses and the panting of the heavily laden camels.
Remember to subscribe.